Belinda Rosenblum, CEO and owner and founder of Own Your Money. I'm so excited you're here, Belinda.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. It's like up close and personal. Yeah, I love it.
Yes,
Let's do
yes,
it.
me too. This has been a long time coming. Yeah, exactly. This has been a long time coming, and it's been so much fun to get to know you virtually. It feels like I've met you in real life, but as many Instagram friends go, we have not met in real life. But I feel like I know you, and you are just so knowledgeable when it comes to controlling the cash flow in your business, paying yourself, pricing strategies, and I cannot wait for our viewers and our listeners to learn a little bit from you. So before we get into all of it, because we're going to really deep dive into all of it, we have to start with a fun fact. You were warned, so we know you knew this was coming. And the fun fact that Belinda told me is that she was co-captain of her high school swim team, but she was not the best swimmer. So tell me a little bit more about that, Belinda.
So I was probably one of the worst. And by the way, I love that you start with fun facts because I feel like this is odd, but like, you know how when you talk a lot and you smile a lot, I feel like my face hurts. And I felt like that just listening to when you do fun facts with folks. Like, that is so random and so funny. And you have such a fun side of yourself,
Yes.
as do I. And I think sometimes that when, we are like more professional and sharing our tips and our wisdom, that we don't get to bring out the more fun side. So I love that you do this. And I share it because I think that sometimes people see us as like, oh, you must be good at everything. And it's like, actually, I was on the swim team in high school and in college, and I literally have never won a race in like 7 years of competitive swimming. Most of the time I came in last or second to last. It's very humbling for somebody who's like a straight A student and like
Yeah.
top of the class. But yeah, I was co-captain because they needed someone to lead them and someone to motivate them. And it's just, I felt like it was such a reminder that it's not just about being the best to be able to lead people. Like you don't have to be the Amy Porterfield or the Jenna
Mm,
Kutcher to like create a big impact in the world. You know what I mean? And to have a thriving business that
mm.
supports you and your family. So when I was thinking of a fun fact, I figured I'd tie something into what we were doing and like be relatable. Because I think that sometimes, it looks like I have it all handled. It's like, well, you can also be like terrible at something and still lead because of who you are, right? Because of my heart, because of um she was a little grumpy to be so, you need someone who's going to help lead the team that like it does bring the fun, you know what I mean? And can be lighter about even about competition, you know what I mean? And can still like lift you up when you don't win the race. And I feel like that's an
Yeah.
important role for us to hold too. Yeah. And not something I ever talk
Such a
about that
good
I'm even a swimmer.
analogy for business.
Mm.
Yeah, it was such a good analogy. I would love to hear more a little bit about this because I think it's so interesting. Were you, when you started on the high school swim team, let's just start there, did you have
Mhm.
hopes of winning? Did you think you'd eventually get there?
Interesting question. It was a long time ago. Um, I'm 52. I'm like, I don't know. When I was 15, I guess at the time I thought that I could just like I am a hard worker. Like I will put in the time. One of my core values is growth and excellence. Like I will always keep showing up and keep learning. I do it in online business. I'm like I joke with people like I'm always listening to something, maybe two or three somethings, on Audible, and I'm in a program or two at all times because I feel like I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
thrive in that kind of environment because I do believe if you're not growing, you're dying. Like there's some part of you that's not turned on and getting to experience the best version of myself and of yourself. And so I think that there was probably a little part of me that was like, okay, if I just show up every day and I work hard and I do the practice, that I'll improve. And I did improve, but not enough that I ever like won a race. And then from high school, I then went into college, and I was like, I swam on a Division 1, like Boston College is a Division 1 swim team. Again, I never won a race, and I usually came in the bottom two. And humbling again. With the college swim team, I used to joke that they'd keep me on because I raised the GPA of the entire team. by being by being on.
I
But
mean,
again, I think there's something to like showing up, right? And putting in the effort and like wanting to continue to improve. Like I always showed up every day to both the teams as if I could keep getting better, as if I could win a race. Like I never kind of just like packed it in, you know what I mean? And was like, oh, I guess I'm just going to come in last so I can just like do the doggy paddle. It was like, no, I always wanted to like
mhm.
get a new personal best for myself or to feel like I was growing into become a better person and a better swimmer in the process. I don't know if I've ever talked
Mhm.
about this on like
Oh,
50 podcasts I've been on.
yeah.
It's all
Well,
part
that's
of
what
who
we
we
like to
are.
do
Yeah,
here. We
we
like
are.
to buck the trends. I am such a firm believer that these like moments in our life and these experiences in our life either are a small snapshot of who we are as a person or have shaped us into who we are as a person, sometimes
Mm.
both. So that's why I'm asking about this because everything you're talking about is so applicable to entrepreneurship. And I'm curious, is this the kind of person you always were? Have you always had that side of you that wants to get better and grow and isn't scared of failure? Or is that something, through the swim team experience and other experiences you've cultivated? Because I know that is who you are as an entrepreneur. And as we both know, is essential to success in what we do.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so yes to all of it except for the not being afraid of failure piece. Like I think that,
Mm,
I was a hard worker. I did like to learn new things. I was and still am like the kid that sits at the front of the class and just wants to like make the most, like squeeze every nugget of what I can learn and how I can use it and now how I can help others. Because part of it is I feel like I'm learning so that I can get better,
mhm,
but also so that now I can be even a better coach and expert and like guide people with what I'm learning along the way. Like they joke that my program is like a book
mhm,
club because I'm like, oh, when I was listening to, 10x is easier than 2x, you have to get this piece. And then when I was listening to, what am I on? Worthy Now. And then there's this new book I'm listening to called Contagious. Really good, by the way. You would totally love it. It's about what helps things
mm.
spread, what helps
I've
ideas
read
spread.
that. Yes.
Yeah, it's so good, right? And so,
Hmm.
so I think yes to that part, but I think that the piece about being more resilient with failure, that has developed over time. I think when I was younger, I
Hmm.
was trying to be perfect. I was trying to prove myself. I think my parents really like wanted the A, and like when I came home with the A minus or the B plus, it was like, what happened? Like, were you sick that
Hmm.
day?
Hmm.
It was like that was the perfection kind of expectation for a lot of it.
Hmm.
And when I look back at it now, I think it was kind of rough because I think that it had me think that that's the way I earned love, right? That I had to achieve
Hmm.
that level. And it served me to some extent, top 20, great school I went to, like top job, but it's taken years of therapy and personal development work, right, to disassociate the work from my worthiness. Right. And so I think
Hmm.
that that's the
Hmm.
learned skill that has come out or learned understanding that has developed since I was, 15 to 21 kind of a thing. And doing that, I
Hmm.
think that, I don't think I viewed coming in last as a failure. I think some of it is the context, right, that we have.
Hmm.
And so for me, it was about showing up and it was about always giving my best. And I do think that that
Hmm.
started early on. I think that the reason why I wanted to give my best has certainly evolved. Right. So back then, I think there was some of the like, well, I
Hmm.
need to prove myself to people, including my parents. And they got divorced when I was like ages 7 to 11, which is like a very prime time when I felt like I had to prove myself to both of them, kind of a thing. But that's a story for another therapy
Hmm.
session or another podcast. But, but that I've just come a long way through doing my own work, to be able to create that. And I literally wrote a book. It's at selfworthbook.com called Self Worth to Net Worth that includes some of my own journey of that disassociation, right? Of taking
Hmm.
of separating hard work from the love that I get and deserve.
Mm.
So
This is
that's
so
a bigger
good.
answer, I
And
think, but a good question.
no, this is great. And I can't help but think about the parallel between, as a student, your grades are the measure of your success, to as a business owner, what most of us immediately think of when we think of business success is money. How many,
Hmm.
figures are on your P&L, or how much you're able to pay yourself is the measure of success. And you live in this world of money. So I want to dive into it. But before I do, what would you say? So someone who's new is listening and has never heard of you, how would you describe who you are and what you do in simplest terms to someone that doesn't know you?
Sure. And then remind me, to tell you something on the point that you just made before you asked me a different question on the whole like
Hmm.
analogy to entrepreneurship, because I do think that there's something
Yes.
there. Um, yeah, how do I describe myself? So I feel like you can't really call yourself a CEO until you can take control of your profits and your time. And I think that what happens is we stay stuck as this overworked employee in our business, or like we call ourselves a small business owner, but we keep ourselves small because we don't actually understand our money. Like it's that simple. If you want to grow your business, you
Mm-hmm.
need to understand your money. And I'm the person to help you do that in a way that can like not bring any judgment to it and be like, hey, no one ever taught you this. Like no one's teaching you finance on the personal side. Certainly no one's teaching it to you on the business side. Let me come in, let me help you set up the money system, step in as the real CEO, and then be able to create a strategy so that you can actually grow without burning out. So that's where I come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
To help you, kind of like a business coach in some ways, but really one that understands how much most people freak out about money. And I think that what happens is most business coaches are actually more like
Mm-hmm.
marketing coaches or maybe sales coaches, and they're not actually helping you create a
Mm-hmm.
sustainable, profitable business. And that's really where I am like essential. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I should be the prerequisite for all of those other courses, because it's like, why build your platform if you don't have anything to sell to the
Mm-hmm.
people that you're building, and then you don't even know, like, is the offer that you want to make going to even
Mm-hmm.
align with the audience that you're creating, right? And so it's really bringing that harmony together to
Mm-hmm.
understand the role of, yes, your mindset, yes, your money systems, and yes, really the momentum that gets generated when you have a real strategy and a profit plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about this idea of money equaling success in business. What are your thoughts around that, and what do you see in the entrepreneurs that you work with? Where are they at in their mindset around that?
Yeah, so this was the piece I was going to say, because you mentioned, the achievement, right, that you would see in your P&L, but it's interesting because for
Hmm.
most people they mentally connect the top line revenue. Right. But the reality is that once you get into it, and I
Hmm.
think you and I have been experienced for long enough, but I think that a lot of people, when they start out, they think that's the measurement, right? Like we idolize for
Hmm.
so long six figures. Like if I only make six figures, like I'll have made it. Well, for everybody listening, and like just so you know, on your path to six figures, you're gonna get to six figures and you're gonna be like, this isn't enough. Like, why is six figures the thing that we all
Hmm.
strive for? Because really, six figures of revenue after you have some business expenses, after you pay taxes, leaves you with like maybe 3K a month. Like, that is not enough to live on. Especially if you have what I
Hmm.
call the breadwinner burden, where you
Hmm.
need to make a substantial contribution or the main contribution for your family, it's just not enough. And so I think that much of the time,
Hmm.
the revenue line is actually what's associated with success. Like you mentioned take home pay, and I'm like, that's advanced. For people to understand that what they pay themselves needs to figure into the equation.
Hmm.
And I think that, to touch on that really quick, and then I'll come back to it, is that like we have this thing called a pay yourself calculator that helps you see, like, what do you
Hmm.
want to get paid? Like, I know we don't want to be in it for the money, but there's so many other things we could be doing if we didn't want to make money. But we've chosen
Right.
entrepreneurship. We've left the 9 to 5 for a 24/7. So we might as well get paid well for it, right? And I think that
Hmm.
a lot of times we have paying ourselves as the last thing we think about. So then we often take the scraps. And I'm like, enough of that. Like, no
Mhm.
one's having this conversation. The business coaches are like, just focus on revenue. And I'm like, no, decide what you want to get paid. Then we'll set your revenue goal based on what you want to get paid, the expenses in your business. You got to pay some taxes. And then we'll have a revenue goal, and then we can make that revenue goal a reality. Without it, it all just feels really arbitrary. It's like, oh, let me pick a number out of the air. Okay, I'll make that my revenue goal for 2024. Well, why? Like, what is that going to do for you? Is that actually going to get you what you view as success? And to the question around money equals success, it's like it feels like it would be revenue, but it's not. I want you to kind of take a step back and decide for yourself what is success in business. With a lot of the clients and students that we have, success is actually having a life and making a lot of money. Like that, I know we say profit first. Amazing book by Mike Michalowicz. Once again, join my book club. I'm joking, but that it's really life first. Like I want to see us design our business right around the life that we want and the money that we want to make from our business. And I know, like me personally, we have chosen, and I in a lot of ways consciously chosen, that I have wanted to pay, for instance, for more of a support team because I want to be able to manage my boundaries and manage my time with the kids and all of that. And I could make more profit and
Mhm.
do more. It's a choice I'm making, that's not my priority. That I have children that are 8 and 10 right now, growing fast, and a stepdaughter, she's like 24, and it's like it's true. And you have ones, and you have this like prime. I feel like I'm watching your kids grow up on Instagram, and like the girls, I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna be in college. Like, what is going on over there at the Dempster household, and Bennett is like close to my son's age, you know what I mean? And I feel like we need to like consciously decide what's the life that we want to have, and how does the business that we're growing support the life that we want to have. And a lot of us are not taking the time to think about this. And it's like we think it's revenue at all costs, that like revenue is our only success metric. And I want to challenge that and have us say, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you get to decide the business that you want to have. And then based on that, we can decide like, how do you want to make your money? Right. And how much do you want to get paid? And I say, how do you want to make your money? We can go into this if you want or not, but that a lot of people think all revenue is created equal. It's not. Right? Like we think if revenue is our only main KPI or a main money target, then we think, oh, I just have to make more revenue. But some revenue is higher profit than others. Some revenue is more time intensive, right? And so when we equate all revenue as the same, we totally lose track of the fact that different offers have a different profit margin, right? Have a different like impact on our bottom line.
Yeah, so
So,
good. And we live in this world, many of us on Instagram. I think that's a main marketing platform for so many entrepreneurs, and I know our listeners. And the messaging is from the big dogs, the Amy's, the Jennas, the Jasmines, about the amount of money they're making, about the revenue. And
mhm.
there is not a conversation around this is how much ad spend was, this is how much I paid in affiliate marketing, this is how much my team is making. And so it's misleading, especially for newer people coming to entrepreneurship. It seems like there's these easy buttons that's going to build the revenue, but this conversation around profit is so important because you can have a ton of revenue and have very little profit. And I know that is really how your story started, correct? You had this personal
Right.
epiphany yourself in your own
You
business
remember this?
that really
Yeah.
is the mission behind your. I remember it. It's so good. How can I not? So, do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure, sure, sure. So this was after my second full year of business. Now, so it's the end of it was 2009 was the year. I've been doing this for a while. I'm a pro, as they say, or a dinosaur, depending on how you look at it. But it was after my second full year of business.
Yeah,
And I remember sitting in
pro,
like my bedroom turned home office, Right, we'll go with that one. And I like opened up an email from my account and I burst into tears. Now, you hope that that never happens to you, right? And it wasn't even a huge tax bill. It was kind of the opposite. It was like I opened it up and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like the profit." And let me just define it really quick for people because you're throwing around terms that not everybody may even understand. So you have total top line revenue is your total business revenue, like total money that you brought in. Then you have your business expenses, and then you have your accounting profit, right? Like the money left over in your business after you paid your expenses. So that number, that accounting profit was $2,348. Now, as my second year business, that might not seem crazy, except for the fact, literally 2 weeks before, I was celebrating that I was like the bomb.com because I had revenue of $155,000 and I took home two. Like literally everybody was getting paid except for me. And that was my like kind of come to Jesus moment, which is kind of funny because I'm Jewish, but it was like that moment where I was like, this sucks. Like something has to change because I just left behind a $150,000 job thinking it was going to take me a little bit to make money. Now I'm making the money, but the system must be broken because my business is making or bringing in 155,000 and I'm taking home. Everybody watching the video, I just had balloons pop up on my screen. But you gotta love it.
I mean,
My business,
that
you know,
number is impressive. Yeah, balloons.
exactly. Clearly, Riverside agrees. But so the business is making money and I'm taking home nothing. And I'm like I mean, it was like break even. I don't even know. I probably made like pennies for every hour that I worked. Like it was so sad to me. And it was that moment though where I was like, okay, like no one's gonna come in and save me. Like, what am I gonna do? How do I put on my big girl panties or, stop feeling like a volunteer in this job that I had created? And I originally thought like maybe I just make more, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work. I just made a lot. I just made 2.5 times what I made the previous year, right? And I still didn't get to take home anything. And then I was like, maybe I just need to take work from my assistant. And I was like, no, because then I'm gonna have less time. Like what am I gonna do that's really gonna change things? And one of the biggest things, honestly, was changing the offers that I was making, the prices that I was charging, created more effectiveness in the business, and I created a profit plan, like an actual plan that included paying myself consistently, right? And became more intentional about the growth of the business. And you don't really need a plan necessarily like for your first, 3 to 5K a month, like until you're making like 50K. It is just like, revenue. Like just figure out what are people going to buy, sell whatever you can, see what spaghetti is sticking to the wall. But once you get past like that 5K a month and you're like, wait a second, this is actually a business. Like I want to make something of this. I want to start getting paid more. Then you too need to get a profit plan, or you too could end up like me and making like, a 1%, 2% margin on all of that effort. And then the good news is the next year after I started making those changes, we grossed $256,000 and I took home almost $100,000, right? And a lot of people, I think, default to this like consumer mindset that says like spend less, like when times are tough like that, like contract, like stop spending. And instead, I was like, well, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. I can't stop spending now. I really need to lean in and realize that I need to learn something different. I need to behave differently. I need to become an investor in my business and instead be able to grow in that time. So that's why our revenue grew from 155 to 2. If I get a message from you, Krista. Oh, you can see and hear me? You are no longer on my screen. Like it doesn't even show you in the room anymore. It says just me. Okay.
To hear a little bit more about but how? So tell me more about how you said you had to refine offers, you had to reprice. So and tell me this in a bit of a way that if I'm listening and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me. It's tax season as we're recording this. So people are in their numbers looking at things and people are realizing, maybe I'm not making as much money as I thought I was, or I'm not paying myself as much money. What are some top tips you can give to people to increase their profit without, as you said, like necessarily cutting back on team or, expenses?
Okay. So I'll go through each one. So one of them was I really improved my team's effectiveness. So there's something called Parkinson's law. So essentially what happens with that is that the work expands to the time that we give it.
Mm,
And what was happening was that I wasn't giving any constraints to the time. I would just be like, "Can you go do this?" And then however long it took, it took. And the reality is that I wasn't particularly efficient with my asks, and that's on us as the business owner. So for instance, at that time I was on TV and radio and like Yahoo Finance and like all the press. I literally had her updating my website almost every day. Is that really necessary? No. Right? Like, are
mhm,
people actually checking ownyourmoney.com
mhm.
every day to see my latest press hit? Not really,
It
right?
would be nice,
And
but
so it would be nice. I mean, it was before Facebook and Instagram were really all the rage back in
Mhm,
2009. But like that was up to me, right? To be more effective with my team, to put more constraints on, to get to updating it every other week or like just in time for a big newsletter or something, right? Instead of needing it to be like all the time, right? So I really focused them on the priorities that actually mattered, and that dramatically improved and increased the results that I got from them.
mhm,
And I really started to involve them in what are the higher payoff activities that they could be doing, right? That I wasn't even having them do because I was having them update the website every day. Right. And
mhm,
just to completely date myself, Krista, this was before WordPress. So, like, it wasn't like you could just, oh, let me just pop in and update it. Oh, no, it was like PHP. It was like coding to go and
mhm,
like make changes to the website. So, it's like every change were probably like, you know, 15 minutes and
mhm,
$10 for every change. And it's just, it all adds up. Right. And I think
mhm,
that yes, I want you to have team and I want you to be effective with the team. I want to make sure that the team is freeing you up. So I needed to step up and stop being like the task manager or the micromanager, if I'm honest, right? And
mhm,
instead, like, be more clear in what I was having them do, the time that I wanted them to do it, and the priority, and to also be able to um, do the things that would either create revenue for me or help free me up so that I could create revenue. Right. So I think that
mhm,
was a big thing. The
mhm.
next thing I'll
Well,
say was,
before you go on, I would
yeah,
love to just sit on that for just another moment more,
yeah, sure.
because everybody wants to talk about, when you're growing, have a team, have a team. And what I've found in my own journey
Hmm.
is, just as you said, just because you have the team doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything's going to grow. You have to really have the leadership skills and the vision and the understanding of your
Hmm.
business in order to make the team effective. Was that when you had that realization? Do you feel like it was just a kind of a little lever you needed to pull and things changed, or was that skills that you needed to really develop within yourself first on how to lead effectively lead a team?
Yes and yes. I mean, I feel like it's a skill I keep learning. I'm 16 years plus now, and I
Mhm,
feel like it's to keep learning how to do that, like to not be the one of my friends just thought, like, not be the task manager, but really be the leader of the
mhm,
business, right?
mhm,
And so yes, there was a piece that I had to start to recognize, like, wait a second, how am I trying to control everything that's happening? And in an attempt to stay busy and control all those little things, how is that keeping me playing smaller? And I think that a
mhm,
lot of people feel safer in the details and in that micromanaging and even in the doing it themselves, instead of taking that step up and to say, wait a second, if my business is actually going to grow to the level that it could grow to, I need to take myself out of every single email, admin responsibility, contract that has to get sent out. Like, so many people will come into Cash Flow CO and be like, I don't know if I can afford to hire admin support. And I'm like,
mhm,
well, how much time are you spending on it? If we freed you up for 5 hours every week, right? That's And it probably honestly would take somebody else less time even than it takes
Mhm.
you to do
Right.
these tasks, right? But it's like that's 20 hours a month. Sure, maybe you're paying somebody just on average like 20 bucks an hour. It's $400 that's going out. But if you got one new client in 20 hours of extra sales and marketing that you were doing, or, more effective, we raised the price of your offers because we
Mhm.
added a framework and we formalized the program. Like I've literally helped people. This is the next thing we can touch on is like triple or quadruple their rates. But
Mm.
I don't love the people that are just like, double your rates, like
Mhm.
broad brushed. I'm like,
Mhm.
no, actually, I need you to stand behind the higher rate and really connect with the value. So, like, if you now have this 20 hours and we can improve your offers, we can get you doing more revenue generating activities, and then you're not doing the stuff that you hate anyway. Like, it's not really in your zone of genius. It's not even in your
Mhm.
zone of excellence. It's probably not even in your zone of competence, maybe, right?
Mhm.
But it's like, you just need it off of your plate, right? And so I think that there's that element of me upping my game, right? And being
Mhm.
like, I'm a CPA, I have a huge wealth, pun intended, right, of
Mhm.
skills and understanding. And this is not the best use of my time, right? And so, yes, I still wanted to have team members and I needed to be more effective with how I was managing them. And I think that in terms of other business owners, I want you to take a look at, are you still micromanaging? Because it has to be like every little like I dotted and T crossed your way, or can you instead really get clear on what's the outcome that you want to create and then give them the ability to figure out what's the fastest way to get to the outcome that you want?
Yeah.
And that was a learning. It continues to be a
Mhm.
learning, and I think that systems made a big deal, like a big difference. I started documenting more. I started being more clear on the outcome that I wanted. And I started focusing on the things that were actually going to move the needle on the business. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
that people are necessarily unwilling to work. I think, if anything, we're working too much. We're just not working on all the right things. Right.
Mhm.
And so that's part of my job, is to show people like what are the right things in the right order for you to be working on so that you can actually get the results that you want, instead of another year where you're like frustrated. You still didn't make this goal that you set 3 years ago. And I'm like, enough of that. Like, stop tolerating that. And how do you step in and say, well, what do I need to learn to be a different person to run this different business? Because
Yeah.
otherwise, we're like a hamster on a hamster wheel. Like this 6-figure hamster, I'm just going to keep running. I'm just going to get up every day. I'm going to keep doing the same things I'm doing. And then I'm going to keep being frustrated because I'm not getting the result that I want. And I'm really here to like, I was going to say shake people, but, give you a hug and kind of like wake you up a little bit, to be like, you don't have to settle for this business that isn't really satisfying you, that's actually kind of frustrating and leaving you feeling like, really, is this all there is? Like, I want you to have the business that you're really proud of in terms of the impact it's making on the world, in terms of the profit that it's creating for you and your family. And you're like, okay, I feel like I'm more living the dream instead of just living the grind, which I think is what a lot of people settle for.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
So number
you know,
1 was getting a better handle on the team and
the,
optimizing what they were doing. What's the second
yeah,
thing that you did?
Yeah. So the first one was optimizing the team's effectiveness. The second one was building leverage into the business. So I actually started to build in people underneath me so that I could create the right type of leverage. Like, a lot of businesses are not leveraged at all. And part of what we end up doing even is finding the leverage um, trigger or lever, the leverage point that's going to be the most effective for your business, right? So for some people it's a group coaching program, for some people it's a digital product, for some people it's team, somebody else it's an agency, and it's figuring out where can we create leverage, so essentially we escape you from the time for dollars, because so many people are in the, I work this many hours, I get paid this much money, and I mean, don't get me started, but it's like we're just trained like this, right? We're trained from an early age, whether it's like working at McDonald's or just like the more hours you put in, the harder you work, the more money you're going to make. If it were only about more hours and more hard work, we would have millions of female millionaires. And we don't. It's like a 1%, 2% of women that have $1 million businesses. It's only 12% of female-owned businesses that even gross revenue on average over $100,000.
I read that. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, I think because we never learned this foundational business understanding to run sustainable, profitable businesses. So I needed to figure out what was going to be the lever point that would help me create more revenue. So I hired another coach, for instance, as one of the major things. And then I charged her out at the rate I was charging, and then I raised my rates up. Right? Because I felt like that was a nice sweet spot that I had created. So I still brought in people to work with her, but now I made money without having to work at all. I just had to sell the person in. I had to, obviously train and hire a good coach, but then that was a way that the business could grow. The business could keep making money. It was pretty high profit for me because I didn't have to spend any hours in creating that revenue. Right. So that was the second thing. And the third big thing was creating a profit plan. Like it was relooking at my offers, repackaging what I was doing, and actually creating a plan that paid me. I think that there was something energetically and like, I needed to feel like this was a business that could help me sustain my family, right? That could help me and at that point I didn't have kids, but it was like, I knew I had a vision of that and a future of that. And Mark and I had just started dating at that point. And I was like, okay, I really want this to work. Like, cause I didn't see myself at that point now going back to corporate. I was like 2.5 years in. I did the corporate thing. I didn't love I don't love the word balance, but like the harmony of having a family and working in corporate, because it always felt like the client comes first, always. And I believed that this was possible to create a business as an entrepreneur, but I needed to figure out how to do it. And I kind of had this epiphany of like, wait a second, I was in personal finance. So I was teaching people how do they do plans for their personal money. And I was like, I need to do this for my business. And I did have a coach and he was all about revenue. I was like, just make more money. It'll all work out. And I'm like, I tried that. It didn't work out. Like, this doesn't really work. And then I was like, okay, that was when I was like, okay, what am I going to do differently, right? I had to prioritize profit. I had to prioritize paying myself a consistent salary. And it didn't start out with what it is now, full disclosure, right? I think it started out at like $500 and then $1,000. Like, but I had to get into the habit of taking some money out of the business, right? Of deserving that I could get paid from this. And so, really now it's like getting that recognition that I needed to become what I now call this like cash flow CEO, right? But to be able to feel like I was in control of the profits and my time. Because at that point, I was like a victim to my business. I just kind of was like, whatever the business needed, I did, and I never felt like I was really in control of my own time through that process prior, which almost was like adding insult to injury. It was like, not only did I not make any money, but I didn't even like have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And so
why do it? Right.
why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Believe me, because I mean, there are thousands, millions of female business owners in exactly that same spot. And so I was like, okay, well, something's got to change and I need to be the agent of change. Right. And I want everyone listening to be like, right, how do you need to step in and recognize, hey, if I want to run, if I want to feel like a CEO of a business, and CEO does not mean like some old white guy in some tall glass building. Like we are the next generation of CEOs. And so it's like, if we want to be that CEO of a real, like sustainable, growing business, you need to be able to understand your money, right? You need to feel like you are in control, right, of your profits as much as you can be. Like, I think one other point of note is that it's not always consistent. And there are ways that we can help you manage the money in the business so that you can get paid consistently, your team can get paid consistently, and the money in your business may vary, right? My goal for our students, our CEOs, is that they have enough ongoing income to be paying them and their team, like, and their basic expenses. And then when they have the higher months, it's gravy, like it's extra, but that they don't necessarily need that. Or that we're able to manage the money well enough so that when they have more, they set it aside and then they pull it in, right, as needed in the next few months. Because sometimes launches can do that. If we have anybody here who's like a course creator, or even a membership site owner where people can pay quarterly or annually, you might get a big bump in your income. And a lot of people would struggle with profit first because they'd be like, okay, I took out more because I made more, but now I'm looking at the next month and it's way down. Right. And then we feel like a failure. It's like we have a memory of a goldfish, and we're like, we forgot that just last month we just had like our best month ever. And then this month is lower. And it's like you have to be able to manage the money in the business so that you don't go on this emotional roller coaster as your revenue, peaks and valleys along the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It's so
I hope that helps.
difficult, I think, because there is such emotion and baggage around money for so many people. And
Mhm.
to tease that out and get that CEO mindset of this is data. And, I have a friend that runs a very large business with physical goods, and she's like, I just try to look at it as monopoly money. It's monopoly money. Like I'm paying myself, I'm paying the banker, I'm paying whatever to take the emotion out of it, which is so hard. Um,
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit because I know we're getting close on our time, but I don't want to miss out on hearing you speak a little bit around the mindset when it comes to pricing and
Mhm.
pricing what you are worth, and is there a formula or are there some tips? Because I think there's two schools of thought. There are people, and I think there's more people in the first school of thought where they underprice themselves, they
Yep.
undervalue what they do. But then there are very inflated prices, and people just kind of like throwing a dart at a bullseye, like, okay, we're gonna, I was charging 2,000 and now I'll charge 8. So there's a little bit of both going on. So what are your
Mhm.
best tips and best practices around coming up with pricing that values your expertise and shows, the value of the product without overinflating things just because?
Yeah. That honestly, Krista, is such a big question. It could kind of be a whole separate podcast episode
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
last 3
I
minutes.
know.
But,
Mhm.
I think that part of it is, and I want to highlight a piece of what you said, right? It's being able to price to the value of your expertise. And first and foremost, to separate it from your own personal valuing what you're worth, right? Because that gets so tricky. It's like, you don't want to take it personally. You don't want to associate what you're charging for this program to mean something about you personally and your own worthiness, right? Because then when somebody says no and they reject your offer, it
Mhm.
feels like they're rejecting you because it feels like, well, that's what I'm worth. It's like, no,
Mhm.
no, no. It's kind of like, to circle back to the beginning of the conversation, it's kind of like when I would associate the grades that I got, or the winning the races or not winning the races, right, on
Mhm.
what that meant about me, on like how I was proving myself. And so I feel like first and foremost, when you can start to separate the emotion out of the prices,
Mhm.
that is like a huge step in the right direction, right? Then we need to learn how to articulate the value of what we're selling. And the more expensive the problem you're solving, generally, the
Mhm.
more you can charge for it. And
Mhm.
if you want to charge more, you might need to find a more expensive problem, and I think that for the person that has that expensive problem, let me just highlight that
Mhm.
really quick, because I feel like we think we just want to sell to everybody, but really we're selling to nobody. And I mean, you talk about
Mhm.
this, right?
Mhm.
That like we need to niche down so that that person feels like, oh, she's for me. Like she gets
Mhm.
it. Like if you're a coach, if you're an expert, if you've struggled, right, with money and with growing your business and feeling like if I grow, I'm going to burn out. Like, how do I do it? You're my person. If you're a
Mhm.
product based business, I don't really price earrings particularly well, right? Or
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
widgets or whatever, right? So then I'll probably send you to one of my friends who handles product-based businesses, right?
Mhm.
And so it's being able to understand the value of what you're creating. And I do think that nowadays it's like we oftentimes have to feel like we're providing a lot of value for what we're getting paid. It's like you want it to be a no-brainer, but you also don't want to cross the line into resenting your client for all
Mhm.
that you're giving and for what you're charging, because there is a resentment line that
Yeah, I've
absolutely
been
can
there.
happen.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's one of those signs that you are undercharging, because you kind of said there's two camps, right? The
Mhm.
undercharging person often feels like, gosh, they're calling me again, or they're sending me another email, or one more revision to that
Mhm.
website, or whatever it is, right? And so we have to make sure that that price feels like it's a good representation of the value of what you're delivering to them,
Mhm.
and a good representation of like what you feel like your contribution to it is. One little caveat I'll say, that often that we also have to disassociate the amount of work and hours that go into that end result. Okay. And I
Mhm.
say this because just like that's how I grew up, millions of other people grew up that way too, right? And they think, oh, I have to, if I'm charging this much money. And that's one of the biggest objections that I get when I'm coaching people through raising their price,
Mhm.
is that they think, well, if I charge that much more, I'm going to have to give so much more. Like, how am I even going to do that? And I'm like, no, time out. Like, the higher perceived value, right? The more that you are in your zone of genius, the more you can charge, not the less. Even though it takes you less hours, because this is your genius, then you
Mhm.
can actually charge more, not less. I actually, when I talk about high profit offers, because a lot of people just think high revenue offers, but
Mhm.
really what I want people to create are these high profit offers where it's a high value to the client and it's a high use of your genius
Mm.
in that delivery, right? In
Mhm.
making that happen. That's really the sweet spot. And that's where we get to price it. And I'm thinking even of Justine. So she was one of our cash flow CO students, and she
Mhm.
started out and she was making her six figures in like YouTubes and brand sponsorships, like other places. And she's like, okay, I want to do more in coaching. And she had a coaching package. It was like $350 for 3 months. We both knew it was too low. Probably everybody listening is like, wow, that's
Yeah.
not very much, right? And she was
Yeah.
like, well, maybe I need to serve 20 people and then I'll start to raise it. I'm like, no, no, no. Hold on, time out. So we need to formalize the program. We need to get more clear on the value that somebody gets in taking the program. That's why I said,
Mhm.
like, what you can charge is often tied into your ability to articulate the value that they're getting.
Mhm.
And then we added a framework. So we actually added more of a system to what she was
Mhm.
doing so they could see, okay, there's something like proven here. Like, this system has helped people. It can help me
Mhm.
as well. Because sometimes why they're not buying is because they don't trust that they'll get the result. Like, maybe you get the
Mhm.
results for other people, but are you really going to be able to get the results for me? I
Mhm.
don't know. But if
Mhm.
there's a system, so she created this system, she created a more formal program, tripled the price, went to $997. Okay.
Mm.
Sold out 8 spots in a week. And like the
Wow.
first time she sold it at that triple price, she was like, left me like a text on Instagram in like all caps. She's like, oh my God. Like, after they said yes, I had to call my husband, and then I wanted to call you, and I wanted to scream into the phone, and I was crying, and blah, blah, blah. And so, and then but then she sold 8 more at that price, right? And then after the 8, she was like, I can do, oh, and I actually taught her how to sell. Like, funny enough,
Mhm.
actually, to come full circle with you, Krista, that she watched twice a training that we did on, I did the successful sales calls part and you did the handling objections part,
Mhm.
and she watched that particular video twice and sold out those 8 spots in a week. And then she's like, sends me a text, I'm ready to raise it to $1297. I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yes.
So she had like 19 sales calls booked from her original ask, and then she sold the next 8 spots out in the next 2 weeks. So in a
Mhm.
month, she made over $18,000, right? And the best part for me, honestly, is that, and I think for her too, was stepping into, I'm not $100 coach anymore. I'm $1,000 coach. Like, she became somebody different in this evolution. Just like we talked about on this episode, like, she stopped playing small. She stepped into, I'm $1,000 coach. And the ripple effects of that are incredible. Like, certainly, yeah, she made a ton of money in that month. But moreover, she now gets brand deals at like double to triple what she was getting before, because now she stepped into her value in a different way. She redid her whole website, and now she looks like the brand. right? Versus the playing smaller version of herself, right? So there's a lot we could talk about pricing, but I think those are some of the highlights, because there's also like pricing psychology that I teach, and price positioning, and all of these things matter, where it's not just about the one offer, but it's kind of like, what's the price anchor that you're giving somebody to compare that offer to? Even sometimes those things can make or break somebody saying yes, right?
Right,
And
right.
so um, happy to share more about that at a later point. If you want to, I'm on Instagram, you're on Instagram, I'm
Yeah,
at Own Your Money. Post this, DM me if you want to hear more about it. I'm happy to share more. But that, we can't just a lot of times give people like buy or don't buy, because like if you say buy at 3,000, so this is one of the things I teach when I teach high profit offers, is like having a strategic wow offer that you're price anchoring whatever you're selling to. Like a lot of our clients um, will start with one-to-one work. And I actually think sometimes people go too fast into group. Like I need you to have a
agree.
solid one-to-one
Mhm,
testimonials, proven system, and then we can scale it up with group, for instance, or team,
mhm.
like either of those couple leverage points we talked about earlier. And so it's starting to understand, okay, your strategic wow offer is like maybe you're all in 12 months, pie in the sky. If you could sell this offer, you'd be thrilled, right?
Mhm.
So if you have a $3,000 offer for maybe 6 months, if you're more starting out, right? And then I want you to have like a $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 offer. No one ever has to
Mhm.
say yes to that. But when
Mhm.
you're talking with your clients, it's like, well, just try the script on, right? And you can chime in here from a sales standpoint,
Mhm.
but that I'll have people be like, okay, I totally understand your situation. You'll reflect back what it is that they want to work on. I feel like I can really help you. We have two options here. Either you can go for a full year with me and we can do A, B, C. It'll be amazing. We'll do a virtual retreat. We'll coach you every other week. Like it'll be great. And this is what's possible right after a year. But if that for an investment of $10,000, but if that feels like too much right now to get started, I can start with the 3,000 where it's talking with me every other month, and we can actually still do A, B, and C. It's a different A, B, and C, right, than the 12-month
Mhm.
promise, but it's something that still reflects what they really want. And they're like, oh, wow. Okay, I don't think I'm ready for the 10,000, although it sounds incredible.
Mhm.
I'd love to start with the three,
Yeah, yeah. I
right?
I actually just did that yesterday with a client.
Yeah.
And I found well, with a prospect, but now a client,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it is a very easy
Once they
yes for
see
the
it.
client. And it also, I
Hmm.
found the lifetime value of those people. They might not immediately say yes to the 10 or the 15, but they'll say yes to the 3,000 again and again and again, or depending on what
Yeah,
your
it's like a starting point.
right. So
Right.
you're getting that lifetime value that oftentimes
Hmm.
exceeds that one time big pack, power punch, power packed punch. So
Right.
yeah, so good. So
Because
good. I could
otherwise
just,
they're going to compare it to zero, right? Otherwise
yes.
they're going to be like, buy it at 3 or keep my money and
Right.
spend zero.
Right.
Right.
That
And
is such
so,
a good tangible
yeah,
takeaway for us to end on. I feel like we could do part 2, part 3, part 4. Maybe you need your own podcast, honestly, because there's
I do.
so
I
much.
know. I
And
would
and
love
I
it.
do think you are a bit on an island in a good way, because there's not a lot of
Mhm.
people teaching business in the way that you are teaching it. To your point, business coach a lot
Yeah.
of times does mean a marketing coach, a sales coach, and but none of that means anything unless you're being able to make money and keep that money to fulfill your life. So tell everybody,
Right.
you said Instagram, but tell everybody the best way to connect with you. And I know you have a free calculator. So let everybody know how they can get all that. We will link it all in the show notes as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it was so funny because I listened to your podcast recently with Brian about like, you don't have to be unique in what you do. And I'm like, okay, well, Brian, like, tell me what I do.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I was like, I can't necessarily just be, and I call myself a business coach, but it's the way I bring it, right? That's different.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's,
so
yeah, the
I was just
differentiator.
laughing when I was listening to you too,
Mhm.
banter about that topic.
Yeah.
So to reach me, so I am Instagram is my biggest platform. I'm at Own Your Money over there, and we do have an incredible calculator. It's called the Pay Yourself Calculator, and it actually allows you. You just literally plug in three numbers And it will show you what you need your monthly revenue to be and your annual revenue to be. And it even has a little part that says, and if you want to double your salary, this is what you have to do. And the cool part is you can double your salary without needing to double the revenue of the business. So it really helps you stop just setting these arbitrary revenue goals and set a revenue goal that actually makes sense for you, right? That can help you get paid, help you feel like you're getting the contribution that you want from your business. So that's the Pay Yourself Calculator. And then we will have our Cash Flow CEO program actually getting redesigned. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, fun.
As well. Yeah. To really then help you be able to get confident with your money, how you're managing it, how you're planning it, who you are with money, right? So that you feel like you have a proven system to be able to scale without the burnout. So yeah, I'll give you the links for all of it.
Yeah, so everything will be in the show notes there, but you can find Belinda at Own Your Money on Instagram. She's a really fun follow. And I just appreciate your time and your wisdom. And I would say if you are listening, nodding your head like, listen back, bring your pen and paper because there were so many good golden nuggets on this episode. So thank you so much for being here, Belinda.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
I do think of a little wisdom, a little wallet, and a little woo. So
Yes, so good. I saw that in your bio. I was like, oh, the messaging coach in me is like, oh, that's so good. All right, everybody. Thanks for
thanks for
being
tuning
here,
in.
and we will see you next week.